Hi and welcome to another narration, presented by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. Please be so kind as to throat punch the like button and smack the arse of the subscription button as well. And remember to chokehold that notification bell and then select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. And by subscribing you'll be the first to see all of our new spooky creepypasta stories. And be sure to check out the end screen at the end of the video. This will direct you to two more videos. One will be the most recent video uploaded, and the other will be a random video from within my catalogue of stories that I have already narrated, so be sure to check those out. I would just also like to say a very big thank you to all of the authors I have worked with, and all the ones that I will work with in the future. So, thank you all, my brothers and sisters. And now, let's just take a moment's silence for all the haters. That's enough. And if you would like to support the channel and buy me a coffee, you can donate to my PayPal, cryptidsroost@gmail.com. And why not? Hashtag cryptidsroost in your comments. So grab your coffee, sit back and enjoy the show. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.
I hope you all have a very spooky, creepy, but a very much happy new year.
I am an outrider for Santa Claus. I encountered something unbelievable during a scouting mission. This awesome story is written by WeirdBryceGuy, a wonderful author over on Reddit, and if you'd like to read more of his works, a link to his profile will be below in the description. It is my job to not only scout the areas ahead of Santa's intended route, but to also dispel, dissuade and deter any forces, entities and fiends who would seek to impede Santa's delivery of gifts on Christmas night. It might sound strange, you might ask yourself, why would anyone want to stop Santa? But believe me, there are many things out there who would benefit in one way or another from Santa being delayed on that great holiday, or outright killed. Joy is not merely an emotion. If there is enough of it in the world, the forces of evil are dampened. The wings of wickedness are clipped. Dark cannot prosper in the light, and there is no greater bulb than a happy heart. So, every year, in the week leading up to Christmas, I am tasked with escorting Santa as he practices his Christmas run, under the cover of night and other magical measures of concealment. And while he rests, clearing away and routing any less brazen foes. Despite the magnitude of the role, it is a relatively simple job. I am normally equipped with enough armour and weaponry to carry out my duties with little difficulty. Pauldrons of mirth, gauntlets of gladness, breastplate of joy, helm of northern integrity, and morning star of merriment. These are just some of the things with which I have been armoured, and all of them are of course of elven craftsmanship. I myself am not an elf, nor am I of any magical or preternatural stock. I am human, but I have been doing this job for over a decade, and I'm quite good at it. This Christmas season seemed like it would go without incident. That is to say, without any opposition I couldn't handle. I escorted Santa across the world, he on his sleigh with his magical steeds of reindeer, while I rode alongside him on a lesser craft, drawn by a flight-capable mammalian species, whose name I am not at liberty to divulge. We soared through the night sky, hidden from view by clouds, darkness, and Santa's paranormal power. I came across only the usual forms of opposition, which I quickly and effortlessly neutralised using the tools given to me by my benevolent employer. When we had finished for the night, and the jolly snow cleric was ready to return to his northern fortress, I decided to remain amidst the clouds for a little longer. if only to measure that no fiends or incubi would emerge in his absence to hold sinister conference amongst the skies. He bid me farewell with his usual jolliness, wished me luck, and left for home. I am not easily frightened. I wouldn't be able to do my job if I often or easily succumbed to fits of terror. But on that night, alone, save for my 2 steeds, I encountered something so abysmally dreadful, so unprecedentedly horrific, that I must admit to experiencing absolute, inarguable, soul-blasting terror at the event's nightmarish culmination. I was hovering over the Midwest of the United States, coursing through the skies with vigilant alertness, when I saw, far below me, a massive and fast-moving shadow. Urging my steeds downward, I descended through the clouds until I came to be right above the great shape, whose finer details were still strangely obscured from view. My vessel is a magically imbued toboggan, is not by any means large, and neither are the 2 beasts who draw it. But it is still a sizable vehicle, comparable in proportion to a car, certainly larger than its terrestrial child-friendly counterpart. So when I say this great shadow dwarfed my craft, I mean that it was immense, far larger than a sleigh, a car, a speedboat, or any singly manned vessel. Never before had I encountered such an enormous craft that wasn't a commercial plane or military transport of some kind, so I dipped lower to investigate. Dropping down so that I was roughly beside the thing and keeping up with its speed, which was, compared to my own, quite fast, I scanned the object for signs of identification, but found only a smoothness of black. The whole thing was one great inscrutable shape. Greatly intrigued, but also a little wary, I made the admittedly irrational decision to try and interrupt or alter its flight path. Pushing my steeds on, I eventually gained ahead of the object and turned abruptly, forcing myself into its way. The craft did not jerk away to avoid collision, but remained in its path, and my vessel, being much smaller, merely bounced off its side. The collision, though minor, jarred me greatly, and my 2 creatures were similarly disorientated. Before I could completely recover and decide what to do next, the craft suddenly glowed, but not with light. Its body all at once began radiating a lustrous blackness, as if somehow paradoxically illumined by the total absence of colour. As you can imagine, this was highly unnerving, and I felt my sense of duty slowly being chipped away by a new, never before felt sense of dread and dark foreboding. Sensing some imminent and assuredly baleful event, I began steering away from the thing, wanting to distance myself from it while still remaining in the general airspace. To my horror, the sheen of blackness deepened in intensity, so that now the object appeared to me like an oblong black hole, a shape with immense depth rather than bulk. I felt I could see into it, that the particles of the upper atmosphere were being drawn towards that abysmal implosion of darkness. Strangely, the thing was drifting skyward, not landward, so that as I followed it, I too neared the grand starry gulf of outer space. By this point, my altimeter was reading 27,000 feet and steadily climbing, and I knew that if I did not descend soon, I'd soon lose consciousness, even while aided by my vessel's atmospheric regulators. As the object rose, it continued to darken, until eventually it seemed to become darker even than the backdrop of space. At this I felt truly intolerably appalled. I hadn't seen anything so simply nightmarish. In my line of work, I've beheld and fought countless demonic, alien, and darkly celestial entities, but this thing, this shape of ultra-infinite blackness, put a stamp of horror upon my soul that will never, be effaced, and yet I followed it, either caught by its powerful gravitation or drawn to it by my own morbid curiosity. I know that it was not duty to my position that drew me towards that supernaturally tenebrous shape. As I've mentioned, I am human, and I am now inexpressibly thankful for my humanity and all the limitations therein. My last glimpse at my altimeter showed a reading of 31,000 plus feet. I remember quite clearly losing consciousness not long after, for after remarking with a dim oxygen-deprived incredulity at the altitude, I looked up and saw something so utterly stupefying that my brain, already under severe hypoxemic strain, simply shut down. In our magnetically tethered ascent, the thing had come to position itself immediately above me, or I had positioned myself immediately below it. Either way, upon looking up, I saw a sky-spanning, conically rising panorama of ultimate blackness, although it also felt as if I looked down into a rushing whirlpool, at the bottom of which was the nadir of the universe. It was an unreal, dizzying display of cosmophagia. This impression of black infinitude was so incomprehensible in scope, so ultra-mundane, that my two beasts, also forced to behold it, fatally lost their minds at once. I heard them bleat out their terror-induced madness for a few anguished moments before dying mid-flight, and still their lifeless bodies, trailing blood from their nostrils, floated or sank towards their gaping stadium abysm. Fortunately, having a mind more refined and slightly more accustomed to the abstract, but of course nothing as perplexing as that, I merely fainted. I awoke on the ground the next morning, half buried in a crater of my own vessel's making, with my reins lying loose and empty along the crater wall, my armour savagely dented. There were no signs of my steeds, although I knew that their bodies had most likely been obliterated upon impact with the earth, if they reached it. I was saved from death by the craft's ingenious anti-crash countermeasures, without which I would have been turned to a stain on the earth. To be honest, I don't know how I even managed to return to the earth. I cannot guess by what providence I was saved from the doom of cosmic devourment. Dazed, bruised, and still beset by a lingering terror, I activated the craft's distress beacon and awaited the arrival of the elven collection crew. Upon returning to Santa's keep, I informed him of all that had happened, and he listened intently, although without the slightest sign of worry on his face. When I finished, he stood and clapped his thickly mitted hands together and exclaimed,
"Well, I am overjoyed that you are not hurt, and I am terribly sorry for what happened to your mounts. I will provide you with replacements at once. Go to the stables after you leave here, but worry not about the shape you saw last night. What you saw was merely an old adversary, one with whom I have comfortably contended for centuries. Before last night, he hadn't come around for nearly 150 years, but I suppose things cannot be simple and easy forever. Worry not, I will see to it that he returns to his joyless garden in the realm of outer time. He cannot harm you. I doubt he even consciously perceived your presence. All will soon be well, I promise you. Go, and Merry Christmas."
And that's how I left it. I went to the stables, met my new mounts, stopped by the workshop to check on the progress of my toboggan's repairs, and had some milk and cookies. Ordinarily, I wouldn't share this information with anyone, but considering what happened, I feel like someone needs to know about that thing. I'm not saying that I don't trust Santa, but it is Christmas, and he has other more urgent priorities. I wouldn't be surprised if the task of wrangling that titanic entity, whatever it was, slips his mind in the next day or two. So I'll give this warning. If you ever somehow find yourself flying at humanly irrespirable altitudes, watch out. There are, unbelievably, things far worse than cloud-perching demons, semi-tangible and fire-breathing worms, and gelatinous monstrosities amidst the jungles of the upper air.